All right. Water main shut off. Opening up another faucet downstairs. Just want as much of the water to drain down from where I'll be working. So just gonna open up a few faucets down here. All right, we're gonna be working on that valve. Water is often draining downstairs from the supply, which is here, but there's water in this toilet and we're gonna be disconnecting this. So you wanna flush the toilet and just hold this down. That'll hold the flapper that's in there up and get as much water out of the tank as possible. Also, it's a good check because when this is up, you should hear the water coming out of here, and we do not, which means that there's no water coming here. The reason we do that is to make sure the water is as low as possible in here. When we disconnect this, we're going to put this into a cup effectively, but if this whole thing was full of water, it would overflow. So we just want to get as much as possible. There's a little bit on the bottom here. All right, so here we are. We've let all the water out downstairs. We turned the main off. We've then opened faucets downstairs. This is upstairs. So in theory, all the water that's in this pipe should have drained down due to gravity through the open faucets downstairs. I mean, there's still be some water in the pipes, but it should have run down from here and kind of drain this out. So the water, we'll still have a little bit of water, but it'll be greatly reduced. We've also drained the toilet as much as possible as well. Have this bucket. I'm going to take this top valve off. Not top valve. This top connector off to start with. Then just put this in our little bucket here. Let's get this situated out of the way. Oh, that actually looks pretty good. And I have the towel wrapped around here just to absorb anything because we are upstairs. I don't want water going downstairs. So we're going to disconnect this. Now, a couple reasons that we're doing this that I didn't mention at the beginning. One, I've had issues with this toilet where I've had to shut it off, trying to shut it off here, and it didn't shut off. So I had to run down and shut off the main. So I know the valve is bad as far as like opening and closing, but the other thing that this toilet's doing, and I don't know if I got this on the recording, I don't think I did, I'll look if so, I'll put it here, but it's got this really annoying sound when it fills a tank. It's like a whine almost. And it's been doing that for a long time. Putting two and two together, what I think is going on is this valve, we know it's not working right. I'm thinking this thing is stuck like half open and it's not allowing all the water pressure to go up. And you can't, when you turn it one way or the other, it's not doing anything. It's just like frozen in there. So I think that's what's going on. That's what we're going to find out today. The other thing that could cause the whining is maybe this loop. It shouldn't, but there's a loop here in the supply line. I'm going to just do one thing at a time. We're going to look and see what's going on with this this valve here. Yep, and no water. And look, ooh, can you see it in there? Sure, it's open. So you see that in there. If I turn it this way, that thing isn't moving. If I turn it this way, it's not moving. So turning it one way, this thing should open all the way up, and turning the other way, it should close. Not happening. So definitely half open. I'm pretty sure this is why we're getting the noise we're getting. Plus we can't shut the water off. So two issues that we have to deal with. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this taken apart. Want to just how this works is there's a nut here. Actually, I'll show you on the new valve that I have. So there's a nut here that tightens up. So you hold here and tighten it, and you that's how it gets connected. Just showing you that. That's what I'm going to do. So loosen this up, and I'll show you a better look when I can do it. There's just not a lot of room here. So this is effectively, I'm holding the top, holding this part as steady as possible. And then loosening the bottom. And loosening is like tightening when you're on top. So because the nut comes up, going to the left is actually what loosens it. And you don't want the pipe moving. So really it's very important to hold this steady as you're loosening that nut. And it comes off. Very important, you see how big of a deal it is to drain all the water out. See, no water came out because we drained it all downstairs. And that's a much closer look at what's going on in there, which is nothing. And I'll show you that in more detail, how this should work. So this is the shutoff valve. When you turn it, you can see through there. And then when you turn it the other way, nothing. So it's a little ball in there that's got a hole drilled in it. Turning this one way opens it up. Turning it the other way closes that ball. Called a ball valve. And this is the one that we had that we took out. And you can see nothing. It just stays the same way. You never see an opening there. This is also not a quarter turn. This is a quarter turn, so you only have to turn it a quarter of the way. And this is a full turn one. But just wanted to show you the difference. Junk. You can see here's a compression fitting, which is already compressed against it. And this is tightened up around the pipe. And that's what holds this valve in. See, the valve sits over, just slides over. This tightens up against that compression fitting, and that's what seals it. So here's the thing. To put on a new one and do everything new, I'd have to get this compression seal off, which I could probably do, but maybe if there's issues doing that, going back and forth, if I bend, mess up the tubing or whatever, then what I have to do is I have to cut the tube, if I can't get this off, down lower, which gives like very little room because there's not a lot of space here. So what I'm going to do first, I'm going to try first is using the new valve, as long as it threads into here with the old nut, because the nut, there's nothing wrong with the nut. Okay, and that is the same type of deal. So what I'm going to do is save myself not only some time, but some potential issue with having to cut this and move stuff around. I don't want to get into too much of that. I know the valve's bad, but this looks like, because a lot of this plumbing stuff's standard, this will work. And I just have to make sure it doesn't leak. So you don't have to get as deep into everything as possible sometimes. So some shortcuts make sense because they save you, I say shortcut, but not redoing everything saves you some time because it'll end up reducing the possible issues that you have. And that's when it makes sense to do it. As long as it doesn't compromise anything. And again, there's a compression fitting and a nut here, which it's not like those are bad. So I should be able to use this as long as it doesn't leak and be good. So you just have to kind of use some common sense when it comes to some of this stuff, and don't get too far into something where you make it a much bigger project. So this should work. I'm going to go ahead and get this on there. And this is what we're effectively just keeping in there. Should you have a new compression, put a new compression ring in there and a new nut? Yes. Do you have to? We're about to find out. I want to make sure that that valve is out so we can get to it. Okay. And then we're just reversing. Oh, that's nice. So this valve already broke. I mean, not the valve, but it's supposed to be a quarter turn. So a chunk of it, the chunk of it that stops it from being a quarter turn this way. So that's off, that's on. There's a piece here that blocks it, and the chunk's out. But the reality is, haha, I'll get you down here real quick. But if you look in here, I can go all the way, I'm gonna go all the way to stop. All the way to stop right now is closed. And I go the other way. See, this is a quarter turn, so I can just do a quarter turn and be open, but you know, if I go all the way up to the stop the other way, you see that it's open. So it's not a quarter turn because that one stopper, the other part of this came off, but I still have it's all the way closed, all the way open with this one stopper. So that kind of works both ways. So even though it's not a quarter turn at this point, because it doesn't stop here, the effect is the same. So I'm not going to worry about it. You just turn it till it stops, and then it's on. Turn it till it stops, and it's off. So go ahead and reconnect this. That'll reduce the mess if something stupid happens. I wanted to just leave it open so you can see how it worked, but it's pretty simple. So better than making a mess and having it go through the ceiling downstairs if something dumb happens. With plumbing, I'm one of those people that over tighten everything, or used to, until I learned my lesson. But with plumbing, you don't have to go super tight on everything. You just want to go snug, make sure it works, and then you can just snug it down a little bit more if there's a leak. All right, you watch here. I'll go down and turn the main water on, and we'll see what happens. On the bottom part of it, nothing, bone dry. Awesome. So now it's closed. Let's go ahead and open it. And you could hear how it's supposed to be quarter turn, so it should be this and this. But you know, like I said, this little tab right there broke. Whatever, it works. All right, and I have water going now through here. No leaks. Okay, I changed my mind. I'm going to show you real quick. I have the towel here. I'm just going to turn this on real quick and make a huge mess. So that's what happens. I didn't expect it to come out that fast, but there you go. So water shoots up when this is open. Now you see. Hope you're happy. So this water shot up all the way to the ceiling here. Yeah, that's okay. I'm gonna wipe that off real quick. Anyway, that's what happens. So make sure you have the water off before you open up any lines. Got it? Good. 2 for the day. Today is the fixing of toilet day. This toilet keeps running. Not stays running, but every once in a while just turns on, fills, and then, makes noise for, I don't know, 10 seconds or so, shuts off. So what that means is this fill valve, there's water leaking out of the tank that's dropping this float to tell it to fill. I have the water off here, just like any other toilet, but the difference here is that water is draining around the flapper or some other way into the tank. There's no water leak outside the tank here. Checked all that, everything's bone dry. So it's not like the water's leaking on the floor. That would be a bit more obvious and not good. But it is causing, whatever's happening is causing the water level to go down a little bit and enough to engage this float so that it then fills it back up. And one thing that I did, I'll be honest, it's wintertime here and this bathroom is really close to the outside wall and I've had pipes freeze. So I honestly wasn't as concerned about this running every so often because it actually made sure that the water moved around in the plumbing. However, this turning on at night tends to wake up my wife, who's a light sleeper, and obviously we're using water we don't necessarily need to. Not a lot, but definitely doing that. So it's time to fix it. Like I said, maybe I just was using that as an excuse to not fix it, but that's where we're at. So somehow water's getting past the stuff down here and going into the tank. Now, when you look in the tank, you don't see it like running down. It's a small amount. So I bought this all-in-one kit. It's got everything in it. It's $20 or something like that. And I get these all-in-ones because maybe it's one thing's wrong with one toilet, another thing's wrong with another toilet, and you just use the same parts. Not the same parts, but you just use what you need and you get more from it. I've done that multiple times where I've replaced the fill valve on one toilet, maybe the handle broke on another, and the flapper's broken on another. So just really easy to get this kit and have it handy. Sitting on the shelf, should something happen, you can go ahead and fix it. $20, no big deal. And I don't replace everything. Used to kind of do that, to be honest with you. But I don't replace everything. I replace what needs to be replaced and keep the other parts as spares. And in my old age, I am learning. I used to be one, and this video is not how to replace this stuff. I mean, there's tons of videos out there that do that. This is about knowing what to replace a little bit more, troubleshooting, figuring out what could be causing it, like the valve video. Part of the video showed that the valve, by hearing the noise and knowing it took longer to fill up, that was what kind of isolated the problem there. This one, we're doing the same thing. So it's not hey, this is how you replace these parts. Tons of those out there. That's not what this is. But anyway, just trying to give you a couple tricks. So going over to here now. I've had the water. So I've had the water off for this toilet. I shut the water off, drained the toilet out as much as possible. And if you remember from the earlier part of the video with the valve, at the bottom of this tank, there's always, like a ½ inch of water because, or more, because there's this neck here. Let me see if I can get you some more light. Yeah, because there's this neck here, and the water's not going to drain down below this. So you're always going to have water at the bottom. However, and I was thinking the flapper on this might need to be changed. Now, I've already replaced the flapper, and it got better. That was earlier on, but I figured there might be something goofy with the seal here. However, I shut off the water. I drained it to the point that there was a ½ inch of water.
went and fixed the other toilet, came back. So I gave this time. The point is, I gave this time. And giving this time, look, no water, no inch of water. So what does that tell us? Well, that tells us that it's not the flapper, because the water was already under the flapper. I could have opened this all day long and the water that was left in the sink wasn't going to go down. So what areas, so then you ask, what areas or what places could the water leave the tank? And there are 4. So on this toilet, there are 4 places that we could have the water escaping the tank. One is this fill valve area here, but again, that's outside. Already checked, there are no leaks there, so we know that's good. There are 2 screws on this toilet, some have 3. 2 screws that hold down the tank to the toilet itself, and these gaskets could allow water through. Yeah. So you can see right there, that's the screw and nut, or whatever you want to call it, and there's no water leaking in there. Check those 2. I've checked those other times just to make sure that there's nothing leaking. Floor is bone dry. So what's left? Process of elimination. This is left. Not the flapper, because we know the flapper has no bearing on the last inch of water or whatever in the toilet. So I was getting ready to replace all of this stuff. However, it might be as simple, and I'm hoping it's as simple as maybe tightening this down. Now, that becomes a little bit of a chore because you can't get to the nut, it's underneath here. So you do have to take the tank off to do that. The flapper is not the issue. If this wasn't sealed into where the hole of the tank is, this water that's leaking down would be all over the floor. So it's a good thing, but for tightening this up, it's a little bit more annoying because there's a nut in an area that you can't get to. So you basically have to take all this off to be able to tighten it the right way, we'll say. And then to do that, you have to take off the fill, valve connection, and you have to loosen it. And I may do that, but first thing I'm going to try is just turning it here, because if we have tension on the nut holding it down there, turning this a little bit will effectively tighten that, in theory. And it's so loose, we know that's a problem, obviously. Yeah, so we're gonna have to, it's just loose. So now we know our water is actually getting in under here because this seal is not tight. So that's where our water is escaping. It's not the flapper itself, so the flapper's good. And again, I'd replace that flapper, so that's been a while, but that is not the issue. So we've now isolated the issue. We just need to secure this, and I'm gonna have to take off I'm gonna have to unscrew these nuts, get to the bottom of the toilet, make sure that nut on the bottom of it is secure, put this back. It's gonna take some time, but it's not gonna use any money if that's the fix for this. I could replace all of this, but there's nothing, I don't see anything wrong with it. So we're gonna try to just do that, tighten it up a little bit, see what happens. There we go, that was big enough. We're just gonna turn this a little bit. Wow, that was really loose. And I'm holding this to make sure this doesn't rotate. I want to keep that the same. Not going super tight, but you could see how much that turned. I'm gonna call that good. It's just plastic, so we don't want to over tighten it. You can see this magento pinkish stuff. It's coming from here. But this is a seal that sits outside of this. The water's coming in seemingly and going through this way. But I'm gonna just reuse that because it's still intact. Again, this is about fixing the problem without doing too much. And oh, by the way, this is on here because it was just easier to get to the smaller connection in the floor than it is that. I have to be careful with this, but when I flip it over, as long as I don't hit, it's fine. That was just a convenience thing instead of having to deal with this up here. So that's tightened. Put that back on. Now I'm just going to reassemble it all. Probably get a bunch of pink and black on my hands. We'll see what happens. I just want to mention, when you tighten these up, you don't want to just really crank one side down and then the other. You want to go even, because this will go cattywampus. So just kind of rotate sides. And again, you don't want to over tighten, but you don't want it moving around too much. So just kind of check that as you go. More. All right, that's solid. Just fill it up a little bit. I'm gonna check to make sure there's no leaks here. And honestly, this is about how much water would be in the toilet if under the flapper. So I'm just gonna leave it like this, come back and check it and see if anything leaked out. I'm gonna obviously check for leaks real quick right now that I could fix, but that'll tell us if tightening that up is what fixes our issue. I don't know, an hour or so, and doesn't look like the level has changed one bit. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn the valve on, let this thing fill all the way up, and call this good. We'll see if it leaks because the toilet will either run or it won't later, and we'll know. But gonna call it good as long as it is, and there's nothing else on the video. You know that worked. $0, but about 25 minutes of time to do that, and you also know how to troubleshoot it a little bit. So that was more the goal than just showing you how to swap parts out, because I could have just swapped this middle part out and it would have fixed it, but it would have fixed it just because I would have tightened the next one more. So gonna leave it this way, keep that kit and have it on the shelf for when something else happens to these. Save some money and time. So today I think the total dollars were, I think that one valve was like $8 or something to fix a couple toilets and get things working better, and to make sure I had a shut off that worked. So I don't know, pretty good. Yeah, probably an hour 15 minutes of time for both of them, but wanted to show some of those things. Maybe you don't know how some of this stuff works. Hopefully you learned something. Don't be afraid of getting into some of this stuff. The things, as I was showing this to my daughter, my kids, my daughter said, well, that's pretty simple. I'm like, yeah, a lot of the things with how a house works, how a car works, a lot of it is simple. It's not as complicated as we make it, but you gotta really get into it to realize that. And the things that you depend upon, they make them simple because they just have to work. The more complicated something is, the more issues you could have. So a lot of things boil down to simple. We've talked about it before. Just wanted to show you some stuff here so you weren't afraid of getting into this, and you had a little bit of knowledge. Even if you don't do this yourself, you have an idea if somebody else comes and helps you, what it is, how it works, and the components of everything.